Welcome to Tea Time with Talent Acquisition, the podcast aimed at fostering knowledge and sharing stories within the vibrant talent acquisition community. I'm your host, Eden, and for the next hour or so, I'm going to be joined by a true powerhouse in talent acquisition. With a career that spans global recruitment strategy, employer branding, ED&I, leadership, the strategic partner brings a bold, human-centered approach to building teams that actually thrive. She's known for transforming hiring processes into inclusive, data-driven experiences, and she's helped scale talent operations for some of the most innovative companies in the world. I won't share the company name, but you can find it out on LinkedIn. Her work isn't just about filling roles, it's about shaping cultures, empowering candidates, driving meaningful connections, and change in how organizations attract and ultimately retain their talent. We're going to explore the convergence of old school tactics and new school methods, offering those that adopt both of these the competitive edge when hiring specifically in our niche talent pools. So when you're ready, grab your favorite tea or coffee if you prefer, and join me in welcoming today's guest, strategic talent acquisition partner, Tamara. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And look, I think from my side, I really want to dive into these old school tactics in a moment because I feel like offline, off camera, you and I were talking quite heavily about, coming from the world we did with recruitment and
Right.
how things are evolving very rapidly. But before we get into the meat of all of that, the first question everyone gets, from your perspective, what do you feel makes a high-performing recruitment team in the current market?
Oh my goodness. What makes a high performing recruitment team in the current market? I think what does that is definitely going to be kind of what we're going to be talking about today. AI has rapidly changed and continuing to change our industry.
Hmm.
And I think that, and I fear that a lot of talent acquisition folks that are coming up now, especially people that don't have, the experience that you and I both have, that with this new with this new world that we're in with AI, that they're going to become too reliant on AI.
Mm.
So I think what makes high performing teams successful in this market is, not losing the importance of these old school tactics that we're going to talk about, and being able to really successfully marry these old school tactics with, using AI today. So,
By the way, we share the same fear. And I was listening
mhm,
to, I think we might have shared this the other day. So I was listening to Sam Altman's conversation with Theo Von on his podcast, and they were
mhm,
talking about fears of AI. It really stuck with me. I was thinking, well, one of the guys who's spearheading one of the largest LLMs in the world has fears of it, which is a good thing.
yeah,
But my fear of recruitment is exactly the same. We become robots off the back of it, and not we always think that we've got this human-centered approach, but in theory, all we're doing is clicking a couple of buttons and just doing call after call after call, but not actually being present in those calls because then we're
mhm,
still reliant on just getting through, becoming more efficient off the back of it, but not necessarily more effective as you've shared
exactly.
before. So I think that is probably the biggest concerns, or one of the biggest concerns I have with it. And it's nice to hear that it's shared, from somebody that is in a different country, different background, different
Right.
situation, but we're still in the same field. So when you talk about old school tactics, what do you mean exactly? Let's just set the scene nice and easy for someone.
hmm So, old school tactics are basically where, for me, particularly doing technical recruiting, okay, I always kind of call myself the non-technical technical recruiter. And so, I have a real interest in technology, and I have a real interest in learning what my potential candidates or my candidates actually do. I go as deep as I can with my experience. I make this little joke. I'm not a developer, but I play one on TV, right? So,
Nah.
so the idea is, for me, with one of the old school tactics is really developing industry fluency.
Mhm.
So, getting exposure to, various publications, industry news, things of that nature. Now, the information that, you're consuming, you make that decision. But, information that you're consuming, you don't want it to be too technical that, you can't
Hmm.
understand it. Um, but taking that information to basically, uh, you have that information to basically be able to engage niche candidates. And so, one of the things is that when candidates are dealing with recruiters, there is this stereotype about recruiters. They just kind of call you up and, ask you these basic questions. They don't really understand what you do. Some people see us as just gatekeepers to the real
Yeah.
opportunities. But, we really, it's important for them to view us as actual partners. And so, in order to do that, you've got to have that knowledge. So, industry fluency. And then, one of the things that you're able to do is you're able to go where these people actually hang out. So, online communities, I used to do a lot of LinkedIn groups before when it's a little bit more effective. But even on LinkedIn as well, basically you're taking, sharing information that you've learned and also creating content around that information, because you don't want to just post a link to you don't want to just post a link to an article and have nothing to say about it. But
Mm.
then from there, getting the conversations going, people are starting to engage you, making sure that you are responding to comments, and so that's what I'm talking about as far as with engagement, because when you're doing that, what you're actually doing is you're really developing a curated talent pool, because when you do have an opportunity, you can go with some real credibility and authenticity to say, hey, by the way, I actually happen to have this role. One of the things that a lot of these communities do not like is for a recruiter, and sometimes they don't even allow you in for that reason, but for
Yeah,
a
I've seen that.
recruiter, yep, for a recruiter to come in and just start like spamming jobs, and a lot of recruiters, that's their mentality, that's what they think of. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about those old school tactics.
So getting into the nitty gritty of whatever it is you're purposely recruiting for, and I guess it's getting as clued up with it without doing the job yourself, right? As
Right.
much as you can. Do you think it's needed? I mean, if you look back in your career and the roles you've hired for, are there roles where you haven't had to do that, and roles where maybe you have? And I guess like 'cause there's certain elements where I do that for sure. I'm
Hmm.
just thinking of my own experience, and there's others where I just fall into the classic recruiter mode where
Yeah.
you go to whatever source it is. So, do you think it's really needed to keep hold of that kind of industry fluency?
Yeah. To be honest with you, I mean, it really depends. Now, if you have, in my opinion, obviously, if you have a role where you have a healthy talent pool, let's say, I mean, just a perfect situation where you post the job, you go back the next day, and in your ATS, how often does this happen? There are
I was gonna say
just
you're talking absolute make believe right here.
That's what
Like,
I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So, you go to the ATS and there are all these just wonderful, beautiful, just, these
every
profiles that
candidate is a
exactly,
is a you can hire them straight
right.
away. Every single one, all
Exactly.
based
Like,
on the location you want, the language you want. We've podcast done.
compensation.
We're finished. Recruitment's over.
Exactly. It's done, right? Okay, we're in heaven, it's paradise. But so if it's that type of situation, which is extremely rare, yeah, okay, maybe you don't have to do that. But the thing
Mm.
is for me, is that I feel with developing that industry experience, that gives me a certain amount of confidence as well, to be able to really speak to these people, these, technical folks, in the sense of being able to kind of hold my own with them. And, when I have that industry when I have that industry fluency, it also helps me to understand, even within the company that I'm working for, within the teams that I'm hiring for. I mean, I'm learning that information obviously from my stakeholders of, what's the role? How does the person fit into this role? What are they going to be doing, etc. But when I
Mm.
have that industry relevance, pardon me, industry fluency, that also helps me to understand even more and to be able to transmit that to potential candidates.
So you're using that fluency more of, well, there's kind of two avenues I'm seeing. You're using it, one, to learn and engage,
Right.
but then there's also this sell component as well, that you're taking what you've learned, and I guess when you talk to stakeholders, do you bring that knowledge in? Does it help you kick back to the stakeholder a little bit more, saying, hey,
Absolutely.
like, don't just give me the lip service. I know what I'm talking about here, and you can kind
Absolutely.
of get the okay. So how do you go and find some of these sources? Because I think, if let's park AI for a second,
Yeah,
because we're talking about the old school side. We'll merge it together in a minute, don't worry.
of course.
How would you go and find it? Because again, the reason I say this is because absolutely I know everyone's going to go, well, obviously you go to ChatGPT, you go to Copilot, insert whatever LM you want here, and gosh, done. But it's limited, I find, with the resources. It doesn't always get you the best, and we want the best. So how do you go and find, or how did you, or do you still go and find the right resources for the right industry, role, whatever, to help uncover the best communities there, or the best niche talent pools?
Yeah.
What was like your
Um,
go-to process?
yeah, absolutely. Talking to the teams
Oh,
that I'm
nice.
hiring for. Absolutely. Particularly for me, we were, well, one of the companies that I worked with, um, I was responsible for finding Ember.js developers. And,
Hmm.
at that time, it was extremely niche. And, what I was able to do is basically, I mean, I was dealing with about, goodness, it was about 10 different teams. And I think out of those teams, about 4 or 5 of them were development teams. I
Hmm.
was able to talk to, the senior managers, team leads on those teams and ask them, hey, what are some, good communities? What are communities that you're a part of? So that's how I was able to get that information, and that was way before AI or any of that stuff. I mean, I could have Googled that information, but I mean, go to the source. And I was able to do that because I developed really strong collaborative relationships with these stakeholders, with my hiring managers. And so yeah, that's how I found out about those kind of what I would consider more non-traditional um, uh, resources.
The
Also, I'm
just
sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say just no no just sorry, just on that, and the reason I wanted to park AI on that, because Google it would have been the thing before. I'm glad you said you didn't to begin with, because there are communities that provide some of the best results I've ever got from, that aren't ranked on Google, and they never
Right.
come up when I chat GPT it, right? So one, for example, is Rand's leadership Slack channel. And you have to be invited into it. I am more than happy to invite anyone into it, by the way. Now that I'm a member,
Mhm.
I am no gatekeeper. Feel free to join. But basically, it's like all C-suites or aspiring C-suites, right? And when I ever have like a C-suite role, it always goes there, and I always get candidates from there before anywhere else. Um, but it's not ranked, because the guy who runs it does not care how he's ranked on Google or whatever. He basically just posted up a page, and it's invite only, and then it kind of spirals from being a good community. So the only reason I know that is because I asked a CTO friend of mine, where do you get, because he's a fractional CTO, I was like, where do you get your business from? Like, where, and
Right.
that's how it kind of spiraled. So it's important, I think, to not lose. We're going to call it old school, but I mean, I'm only been in the industry for 12 years, so it's not really that old school in comparison. But I don't think we should lose that. That curiosity, I think, is probably the big thing for your industry fluency of where do you sit? How do you find this information? Let's talk to people instead of just sitting on a chat system and
Absolutely.
relying only on it. Um, you mentioned, sorry, I know you would carry on with that, but just want to repeat it back, because you mentioned about speaking to your stakeholders as well in general. So is it just to find out information around where do people sit, or do you ask, when we talk about these old school methods, do you do more of your stakeholders?
Well, the other thing too, again, another, I guess, old school tactic, which
We
people
we got
should
it. We
still.
got to stick with the term now.
Right,
It's stuck.
exactly.
We got to
Old
stay
school.
here.
Something that people should definitely still be doing is, beyond just asking questions about, where are some of these communities, online communities where people like you hang out. There's also the question of, when you're actually, typically when you're getting the job order, and that's a
Mhm.
really old term, right? You're getting the job order, and you're talking to the hiring manager, and you're getting down the must-have skill sets, right? You're also getting what are known as, if needed, the adjacent skill sets, especially for things that are very niche, where it might be hard to find exactly what you're looking for, but if you can find people with these adjacent skill sets, those people can be kind of upskilled to what you want, right? But one thing that's really, really important that I think some people do forget is finding out from your stakeholders. Okay, so what makes this role appealing to someone?
Mhm.
Someone that is outside of our company, okay, that's in this present market, for example, what is going to really catch their eye about this particular role? It's kind of the, value proposition of that
Yeah.
position. And, when you know that, it's easier to sell the role, for one thing, when you actually get these
Mhm.
people, on the phone, or, in the chat, as we kind of do nowadays, in the chat room. But it's also basically, it also influences where you look for folks as well, because for example, going back to Ember JS development example that I used, at the company that I was working at, Ember is open source programming language. And two of the original developers that helped to develop Ember JS were actually on staff
Oh
with
wow.
our with the company. And so this company, they were huge Ember JS cheerleaders. And so for me, looking for Ember developers, or people that were interested in getting into Ember development, or even people that, because one of the adjacent skills, or some of the adjacent skills, were Java based languages, right? So I was looking for folks, if they didn't have Ember, TypeScript, React, or JavaScript. So even when I'm talking to people that, weren't necessarily that interested in getting to Ember, I'm able to bring up this value proposition of like, hey, by the
Yeah.
way, we've got these guys on staff. So it's a really great opportunity for you, to work with these guys, either, directly or indirectly, cross-functionally on teams. So that's the type of information that, really
We
helps you to
um
sell.
we call that the bankroll
I
close
love that.
in the external world, where it's compounded interest, it's banking interest for the future of knowledge, or however you see it. It's really good if you have a low salary for something, and you have one of those value propositions and a low salary, you can
Absolutely.
kind of get it. If you have both, no value proposition and low salary, bit more challenging. But there you
Yes.
go. There's a bit of external recruitment for you. Um, but I love that. I think there's the value proposition, and something I've been doing. My colleague's done it for a little while. I basically sit next to him every day, so I've stolen his method to it. Um, when we understand what would someone need to be successful, what's unsuccessful, you understand both of those, and then we kind of can start playing around those adjacent skills. When you're speaking to a prospective candidate, unless it's a home run, and let's be honest, not everyone is a home run, right? But you know
Right.
when
Of
they are.
course.
So what we try to do now, or what we do, sorry, is we're very transparent. We'll say, look, this is where we feel it's going right, but if it does go wrong, this is where it's going to go wrong. And I'm kind of telling them up front before we even start the process. And look,
I
it's not
like
me
that.
saying I don't want to send you. I think your
I
profile could be
like
great
that.
because of all of these skills. And the response is brilliant. They're like, thank you. Like they know where they stand. They know they're not a 10 out of 10 in terms of that process. They know
Right.
there's some areas. They also know going into that first interview, that's probably the areas that they need to really hone in on
Yes.
and try to find adjacent skills around it. And like I said, you only really know that when you understand what good
Right.
looks like, what bad looks like in that particular role, and where the cutoff points are. So it's taking it a bit further than just, um, you know, what are you looking for?
Right.
And
I love that.
the other thing he does quite well. Uh, why would someone join your team specifically? which I know you mentioned kind of on there, but
Mm-hmm.
ignore the company, but why your team? Why
Right.
now? What's the reason you like? Again, forget skills. But why should someone actually join you?
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. Absolutely. And, that's a part of that's that human touch there, because I'm sorry, and I know we're going to talk about AI in a little bit, but AI can't do that. An AI agent, I mean, maybe basic kind of assessment questions of like, okay, if you answer this correctly, then you're good. But if you answer this way, then you're not as, you're more mediocre. You can't have those types of conversations with an AI agent. It really needs to be person to person. And yeah, that's the thing that we have to make sure doesn't get lost, not just in our industry, in all.
Yeah. And that's go back to the fear, right? That is the fear that I have, is that sometimes we're going to lose these little nuances, these little touch points. I was speaking to a lady called Dora, who's also coming out next week, by the way, with the
Mm,
podcast. So she's going to come after yours. Highly recommend it. It's a good conversation. But we were having this discussion, and it was more around, for example, when you've got someone that you need to put your arm around them a little bit in a search process, right?
mhm.
Maybe they're halfway through the process, they're getting a little bit edgy, they're not sure if it's the right move for them. And sometimes it's just, hey, let's go back to basics. You were looking for X, Y, and Z, we're offering X, Y,
Right.
and Z.
Right.
That sort of conversation, just an arm round them sort of situation, and it helps. And you can do it on a text message, you can have a quick FaceTime call, whatever. That's the part we're going to lose, I believe.
Absolutely.
When we talk about AI and we talk about process and we talk about recruitment, that's my fear, is that we're going to lose those little touch points that make a huge difference, because we just become process and we just become ingrained into back-to-back calls just to get through the calls and not
Right.
really having that. I mean, someone was going to call me out and say I'm wrong, but I see it already happening through ATS systems, and just you're just sat in a funnel, and that's it.
Yeah. It's,
Um,
yeah.
but let's get excited about AI then with what you're sharing. So like, we've got three nice examples. So we've got job order intakes and things like that. We've got industry fluency, and then the other one you mentioned was bear with me.
Basically value, the value proposition for that particular role.
Yes. Oh no, sorry. Yes. So finding the hangouts. Sorry, I have my
And,
notes on
and
it.
also where people are located. Yes.
Right. So I mean, you can pick whatever one or all of them if you want. But now the idea is we connect, right? Old school tactics to new school methods is kind of
Right.
how I would look at it, right? And the new school method really is AI and all the tools around it. So
Right.
how can we take one of, if not all of those examples, and put that AI blend to it and say, look, we're not discounting it. We're just saying maybe it's not the holy grail of everything. We should
Right.
do both. But how can we bring in, I mean, so maybe say start with the first one you mentioned, which was more like the industry literacy and
Yeah.
fluency. How can you use AI then to get better there?
Right. And it goes back to what we were talking about before about, AI. Um, you know, AI does not make you more effective. It'll make you more efficient. But if you're already effective, with with what you're doing, then AI is, I mean, it's a great tool. And AI is a tool, it's not a replacement. That's the big thing.
Mm,
So, for example, with the industry literacy, AI makes it easier now more than ever to be able to really digest a lot of content. So, you're still getting those, industry news information. I mean, there's so many sources, right? But the
yeah,
thing is
information overload sometimes.
information overload, absolutely. But AI can help with that. AI can help with that. So, for example, let's say you have an article that you're interested in potentially using to share for engagement. You can take that article and with a nice prompt and get a nice summary of that article, something that's in digestible chunks that you'll be able to process yourself pretty easily depending on what your learning style is. So
Yeah,
what's kind of cool also about with AI, you can change the tone of that summary as well. You can make it more technical or less technical depending on, what you want to learn.
Hmm.
The other thing too is, AI makes it easier now more than ever. I'm going to say that a couple times to be able to create content around what you're sharing. And so, you're able to create, really interesting, engaging posts that, you can put on, LinkedIn or some of these, other online development communities, wherever you decide. But the caveat is that you have to understand what you're posting. You can't just put a prompt into say for example ChatGPT, come out with this really interesting post, and you don't understand it, you don't know what's going on with it, you just post it. Because what happens is that when you start getting engagement, it's still your responsibility to engage. I mean,
Yeah.
when you have comments, you need to respond to those comments. You have to be able to respond to those comments elegantly, but also intelligently as well. And again, I mean, it's like I said, it's a tool, it's not a replacement. So, AI is not going to put that knowledge in your head. You have to have
Mm.
that knowledge. So that is around industry fluency. AI makes it easier, okay, to find different sources of talent. Slack channels. I've heard, obviously Twitter. Sorry, X, as they say now. I'll always call it Twitter. I don't
Old
care.
school tactics there.
Yeah, exactly. I don't care what Elon says. It's still Twitter for me.
Yeah, it's Twitter for me as well. Don't worry.
Absolutely. So the thing is that, using AI to be able to find, these different sources, and sources that you wouldn't know, channels that you wouldn't know about because you're not in those communities.
Yeah.
So that's another way that you can use AI as well. So,
I think, as you said there a few times, it's another tool, and that's how I see AI. It's another tool to the tool chain. Right? We had mobile phones, which now does
right,
mostly everything that I need to do as and when I had a desk. I started with a like old school, like literally computer, like plug-in computer, sat at my desk at work. I finished at 5:30 and I couldn't take work home. And I have a laptop, I have a phone, it comes with me everywhere, right?
right,
AI is just a tool to our
right,
tool chain, and it will be 100 years from now a distant memory because it will have the next big thing, and it will just be keep going that way. But I think and I love the fact you touched upon content there, because I think what we yearn for, as it is human connection
right,
and content. And we like to be the main character of our own story, and we like to have, look at what I made. Look at this piece of writing, this picture, this game, this whatever, right? And let's share it with the world. We love sharing things. Even if you're a bit more introverted, you still share things to your circle of friendship group and things like that. But that's what AI helps us with. It helps us build
right,
connections in the sense because we can spend more time with people and not in the mundane, and it gives us more opportunity to create that content behind the scenes as well. It's just making sure that we don't lose touch of those two things. That's where they come back to the fear element, and not to be a fearmonger in any way. If we lose touch of those 2 points, and that's when things I think will start dipping into a little bit of chaos. But as long as we sit there and go, okay, my job as a recruiter is I want to absorb, redistribute content, and then build connections.
right.
You've got a job for life, in my opinion, because
Absolutely.
you're like you and I speaking right now. We're not going to watch two robots speaking,
Absolutely not. Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, you might one day, but realistically, it's not in our lifetime, right?
Right.
And so I'm quietly confident that recruitment is here, right? It's not going to change drastically. We're not going to constantly be talking to a robot and that's it. People might do it for some companies, but I think by and large, people want to speak to someone, want to feel heard. So I think having those old school tactics constantly, refined and bettered, that's not even a word, refined and getting better, and then bringing the new age tactics in to blend the two together. I think that's
Absolutely.
the holy grail.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Completely agree.
I really appreciate you being transparent about all this, because I think sometimes when we talk about AI, people are a little bit hesitant to put their name to things that isn't either, oh my God, it's the greatest thing since
Right.
sliced bread, right? And this is quite an honest chat to say that there are elements we're not entirely sure about, so don't lose track of the old. If someone wanted to continue the conversation with you, wanted to get to know you a bit better, learn about your past, where can they find you?
Well, I am on LinkedIn as we all are. So, check out my LinkedIn profile. I'm always happy to connect with others. And yeah, that's the best place to find me.
Perfect. I appreciate you so much joining and being part of this. So thank you so much for sharing your insights.
Thank you. Great conversation. Thanks.
Have a good day.
You
Bye bye.
too. Thanks. Bye.